Family. It's supposed to mean safety. The people who stand beside you when the world turns cruel, the ones who love you without question. At least that's what I always thought. But I learned the hard way that family can be the ones who shove you into the fire and watch you burn. At my lowest point, sick, broke, and barely holding on, I reached for my parents. I begged them for help, for compassion, for even a shred of kindness. They didn't just turn away. They cut me off completely, like I was a diseased branch ruining their perfect tree. And my younger brother, the golden child, he laughed. He told me I was weak, pathetic, a burden they never should have carried. For a long time, I believed him. I thought their betrayal had destroyed me, that fate has a dark sense of humor. Years later, when their precious son stole $2.5 million and left them drowning in ruin, they came crawling back. Suddenly, I wasn't worthless. Suddenly, I was their only hope. Did I forgive them? No, my revenge was colder than they ever imagined. And it cut deeper than they'll ever heal. I grew up in a family where favoritism wasn't hidden in quiet glances or subtle comments. No, in my house, favoritism was loud. It was obvious. It was worship. There were two children in our family, me, the elder daughter, and Ryan, my younger brother. From the moment he was born, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Ryan wasn't just a child to my parents, he was their crown jewel, their golden boy. My mother used to say it often, like a mantra: boys carry the family name, girls just leave. She said it while cooking, while talking to neighbors, even while scolding me for things Ryan had done. My father would just nod in agreement, never once contradicting her and me. I learned early that if I wanted their love, or even scraps of it, I had to perform. Straight A's, perfect attendance, awards pinned to the wall like little trophies of my worth. I bent myself into pieces to be perfect. But it didn't matter, because no matter what I did, Ryan was always their son, and I was just another star orbiting, burning myself out to shine in their sky. If Ryan got a C in math, Mom would smile and say, he's just creative. Numbers aren't everything. If I got an A, she barely looked up from the dishes. That's what's expected. When Ryan broke the rules, staying out late, wrecking his bike, even sneaking money from Dad's wallet, it was brushed off with excuses. Boys will be boys. When I forgot to fold the laundry one night, I was lectured for hours about responsibility and discipline. Ryan could demand things, new shoes, gadgets, spending money, and my parents would give in without hesitation. I was told to be independent, to stop asking for handouts, as if wanting the same things he got automatically made me greedy. And the worst part? Whenever Ryan made a mess, I was the one cleaning it up. His broken promises became my burdens. His mistakes became my punishments. Still, I convinced myself it was normal. That's how families worked. At least that's what I told myself in order to cope. But everything cracked after college. I had worked hard, harder than I should have needed to, but I built a life of my own. A decent career, a modest apartment, some savings tucked away. For the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd escape the shadow Ryan cast over me. Then illness struck. It came without warning. An autoimmune disorder that hit me like a storm, leaving me bedridden for weeks. My strength evaporated. I couldn't work. Medical bills stacked up like a tower ready to crush me. My savings bled dry. Friends I thought I could count on drifted away when the fun stopped and the struggle began. I reached out to my parents. I thought surely this would be the moment they'd finally show me compassion. Surely, when I was at my most vulnerable, they'd see I needed them. Instead, my mother's voice was cold. You're an adult now. We've done enough for you. We can't waste money on endless doctor visits. Waste. That was the word she used about keeping me alive. Ryan, of course, had to add his poison. He smirked and said, Maybe if you weren't so uptight, you wouldn't be so sick. Karma, for being selfish. I begged them. I cried in front of them on my knees like a child. I reminded them of everything I had done for them, the years of sacrifice, of obedience. My mother's face stayed carved from stone. My father couldn't even look at me. And Ryan, he laughed. He actually laughed. That night, they cut me off, blocked my calls, locked me out of the house I had once called home. I was left to crawl through recovery alone, dragging myself through part-time jobs even when my body ached too much to stand. It broke me, not just my body, but my soul. Something snapped inside. I realized the truth. I didn't have parents. I had wardens, and their only prisoner worth saving was Ryan, so I learned to live without them. Years passed. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt myself. Brick by brick, dollar by dollar, I became stronger. The irony wasn't lost on me. I found work in finance, managing money, saving for people who trusted me while my own family had abandoned me over the same thing. I thought I'd finally buried them in the past. But fate doesn't let go so easily. Because one day, Ryan, my parents' beloved golden boy, was caught in the middle of something massive. Something explosive, something that would burn their perfect little world to ashes. It started with whispers. News about a local hedge fund manager accused of embezzlement. At first, I didn't care until I saw his name. Ryan. My chest tightened. Ryan, the golden boy who'd laughed when I begged for help, was the headline. Papers called him a mastermind. I knew him, reckless, arrogant, greedy. He thought he could skim the top and nobody would notice. They noticed. My phone buzzed. Mom, Dad, dozens of calls. I didn't answer. The story kept looping. $2.5 million missing, investors furious, a trail to Ryan's firm. Finally, a voicemail. My mother's voice, small and frayed. Sweetheart, she said, please, you don't understand. Ryan didn't mean for this to happen. We need your help. The lawyers, the investors, we could lose everything. Everything. Their house, their savings, their polished reputation. For years they turned away when I was falling apart. Now they wanted me because I had something they suddenly needed. Stability, finance contacts, a steady hand. I had built my life by force, earned trust, paid my own way. They wanted me to stitch their mess back together. I let them stew. I didn't call back. I watched the headlines as their world cracked. Neighbors murmured. Friends stopped returning calls. Shame unrolled like a stain through the neighborhood. Ryan was released on bail. He paced the house like a cornered animal, nervous, petulant, blaming everyone but himself. When he looked at me, his face hid. Don't act like you're better than us, he spat. You owe this family. Oh, the word hit me like a slap. I remembered my mother calling me waste. I remembered being locked out, crawling back into the night. I remembered covering for Ryan, mopping up his messes, paying small debts, forgiving because breaking the family seemed too heavy. When I finally agreed to meet, I did it on my terms. We sat in their dining room. The chandelier trembled. The room felt brittle. My mother's hands shook. My father looked exhausted. Ryan sat rigid, jaw clenched. Please, my mother whispered, reaching for my hand. We need a loan. Just until this blows over. They wanted to paper over a wound they'd caused. I could have bailed them, outwired funds, signed papers, called favors. People would have whispered, forgiven, resumed their polite lives, but I had not forgotten. Their apologies were thin, practical things, words to stop the bleeding, not real remorse. Something cold gathered in me then. I would help, but on my terms. My help would not be pity. It would be a mirror. I would make them feel the cost of turning away when it mattered most. I folded my hands. Feeling a patience sharp, I said I would help, and I began where they expected me to begin, by being useful. I put on the role of the prodigal daughter returned, calm, competent, apologetic enough to be believable. I made calls to lawyers, referred them to accountants. I knew and sat through meetings with a face that softened when they needed it. I let them think my heart had melted, but beneath the surface I was aligning pieces. Revenge, I decided, would be surgical. It would not be a scream, but a steady tightening. Not a single strike, but a series of small, merciless pressures that together would break their backbone. I knew the loss rhythm, the way investors panic, the appetite of reporters for scandal. I knew how to see doubt and let it bloom. First, I fed the defense false confidence. I recommended a firm I knew would drag its feet, competent enough to appear helpful, but slow enough to miss strategic windows. I suggested mediators whose histories involved quiet settlements rather than bold defenses. Each recommendation was chosen to waste time, to let deadlines pile up and the press grow bored with private negotiations. At the same time, I cultivated the opposite facade for the public. I planted small, anonymous tips with local reporters' facts that were verifiable if someone cared to look. I made sure the right numbers surfaced, the missing transfers traced to accounts that looped through shell companies. I didn't forge evidence. I opened doors that had been carelessly left ajar. Journalists are scavengers. Give them a scent and they follow it to the bone. I turned investor fear into a weapon. Quietly, I contacted trustees and auditors I knew and asked questions about protocols and gaps that allow theft. The inquiries sounded like due diligence. To those who cared, they hinted at deeper rot. When money smells like risk, it runs. Ryan was easy to manipulate because he still believed the world owed him favors. I fed him calculated kindness. I reviewed his statements, pointed out small errors, then suggested quick fixes he could authorize without thinking. Those fixes opened pathways for auditors to explore. He signed careless. He trusted my calm voice like he trusted my willingness to cover for him. At home, I let my parents' desperation show. I made private, performative calls expressing worry, promising to pull strings. They took the bait. They began to lean on me more publicly, praising me to neighbors, posting gratitude on muted social feeds. The town softened. People who had been cold now sent supportive messages. It looked like reconciliation. It looked like salvation. But reconciliation was a mask. The more they trusted me, the more I could direct their choices. I nudged them toward actions that would expose assets, refinancing the house to pay fees, transferring titles to safe names, consolidating accounts into firms requiring disclosure. Each action seemed sensible to them, but to me it was choreography. Every transfer left a trail, every title change created a legal knot. I designed a paper trail that would be impossible to unwind. There was also a darker thread, call it theatrical justice. I slipped old grievances into conversations, casual anecdotes to the wrong ears. A neighbor heard my mother laughing while I was sick. The neighbor mentioned it at a book club. Someone told a blogger. Human gossip became a secondary case against them. Not legal, maybe, but reputational. Reputation destroys opportunities money usually saves. I set gentle traps with emails and meetings. I asked Ryan to send documents for security review and then forwarded file names to forensic accountants I trusted. I scheduled a fake investor call and then leaked the call summary to a reporter, making it seem like the family was evasive. Every leak was calibrated, enough to provoke, not enough to prove fabrication. The goal was friction hot spots where investigators would dig and neighbors would whisper. Weeks became a campaign. The house that had felt invulnerable grew defensive, then frantic. Dad argued more, Mom slept less, Ryan snapped at small things. Their friends stopped showing up, citing a busy season. The golden child who once got away with anything found doors closing down at night. I watched them through the thin membrane of civility they tried to keep. Their whispers multiplied. Secrets they thought buried surfaced in worried, stammering confessions. I sat with a brittle satisfaction, no triumphal gloat. Only the quiet knowledge that I had taught them a lesson in documents and silence. I wanted them to feel the legal weight of every slight they ever made. The courtroom air was thin and sterile, like a room that had watched too many human collapses. I sat in the gallery with my hands folded, feeling no triumph, only a steady, cold observance. The prosecution unraveled Ryan's life in tidy, merciless threads, transfers, shell accounts, lavish purchases traced back to his firm. Photographs of his new car, receipts for jewelry, dinner tabs, small evidence of a larger appetite were laid out like proof of intent. Ryan tried to look brave. He leaned into the defense, mouthed rehearsed lines, demanded pity with a voice that hoped to sound sincere. But the numbers didn't lie. Each figure hammered a nail deeper. Witnesses who once polished his ego now spoke of uncomfortable meetings, of promises broken, of funds vanishing in the night. Investors cried in open court. The judge's face never changed, but the tallied losses became its own sentence. Outside, cameras circled the building like vultures. Neighbors craned from hedges. The town's polite facades peeled away under the glare. Reporters read filings aloud on live television. The family's name, once whispered with admiration, snapped into something else, a cautionary tale. My parents sat in the front row, holding hands as if to stitch themselves together. Fear makes your voice small and your fingers clumsy. My mother's lip trembled. My father's knuckles were white. They mouthed apologies at me, silent and useless. They searched my eyes for a miracle. There was none. When the verdict came, it was a dry pronouncement, but it roared. Guilty on multiple counts, restitution ordered, jail time likely. Ryan's world, once propped with flattery and shortcuts, collapsed into concrete realities. Liens, seized accounts, foreclosure notices waiting like vultures at dawn. Word spread faster than paper. The house was wrapped in legal notices. The bank called about accelerated loans. Friends, some I'd watched fawn over Ryan sent curt messages. So sorry. The politeness was a veil. Avoidance followed. Neighbors walked their dogs the other way. Invitations stopped. Doors that had once opened for them stayed shut. I watched them lose not just money, but the currency of respect. My father, who had nodded at every slight and laughed off my pleas, now stood stripped of social armor. My mother's pride, the same pride that labeled me waste, crumpled like paper. Ryan's anger turned inward. His bravado became hollow coughs in his chest. I felt no jubilation. I felt a solemn satisfaction, like a surgeon who'd cut out a malignant growth. The lesson landed. They understood, in a way I once wished for, abandonment has consequences. The rest would be quiet appeals, whispered rumors, nights bargaining with what remained. They felt the cost of abandonment. But justice, in its slow and precise form, had been served. In the weeks that followed, I often asked myself if it was worth it. Watching them unravel, watching their perfect lives collapse into something unrecognizable, it didn't bring back the years I lost. It didn't erase the nights I lay in bed, wondering why I wasn't enough for the people who should have loved me most. Revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't stitch the wounds shut or make the scars disappear, but it does something else. It levels the scales. It forces those who once stood above you, looking down, to feel the ground vanish beneath their feet. My parents live quietly now, their house gone, their savings drained. Ryan sits behind bars, waiting out the years with only his bitterness for company. They will never again laugh at my pain. They will never again call me a burden, sometimes. I wonder if I became like them, cold, calculating, merciless. But then I remember they taught me this. They showed me what abandonment feels like. I only gave it back, Dot, and now I leave you with the question I've wrestled with every night since. What would you have done in my situation?